Amendment 5 deals with some of the same issues. Because what I hear from people is, how come it's not more specific? Because details don't belong in the Constitution. It says you have to have women voting, but it doesn't say how. The details belong in legislation. The details belong at the state level. The details do not belong in the Constitution. Amendment 5 is the same way. Let me give you one quick example. Another amendment that was put into the Constitution by the voters was the increase of minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and just tell you all that from an economic perspective, that's horrible policy. We're going to mess around and have a $27 Big Mac here for too long if we're not just real careful. But let me ask you this. What happens when society continues on down the path that it's been and the determination is that 15's not enough, 25's not enough, 30's not enough? What are you going to do then? Because the Constitution says it's $15 an hour plus inflation. And that's it. It will require another amendment to correct that amendment should they determine that it's not enough money per hour, which the government shouldn't be dictating in the first place, and it sure doesn't belong in the Constitution, and it should not be dictated permanently that way. You don't put details in the Constitution. It's a framework. So Amendment 5 is a framework that asks 3 relatively simple questions. The first is, shall the state of Missouri be constitutionally mandated to eliminate the income tax for the state of Missouri, utilizing the growth in revenue of the state to offset the needs of the income tax over a period of time? The income tax brings in roughly $8.5 billion, but when you give back the refunds, the number we're looking at is right at $7.8 billion. In order for us to do nothing else, just say, yep, we're going to eliminate the income tax and we're going to do it by the growth of the state over a period of time, it would approximately be 30 to 33 years before we would get to zero based on growth estimates alone. Well, I'm 60. I don't want to wait that long. Furthermore, I don't want my grandchildren or my children or grandchildren to have to wait that long. I'll talk about why here in just a minute. Secondarily, the question is, shall the state of Missouri be allowed to expand the sales tax basis and to increase the sales tax so that the revenues brought in from that may only be used dollar for dollar to lower the income tax revenues required, thereby dropping the rate even more quickly, and we can get to zero within 5 or 6 years. That's the part that has everybody hung up. So let me tell you just a few things, and like I said, I'll answer whatever questions you have at the end. I'm happy to. First off, the current state sales tax amount for the state is 4.225%. It shall not go higher than 6.25%. I know everybody's seen and heard, they're going to have 30% on your groceries and 25% on your dog walker. And none of that's true. It cannot go above 6.25%, and here's why. The surrounding states also have sales taxes. If we were to ratchet up the sales taxes higher than any of us have ever proposed, by the way, this is all made up for social media. But if we were to ratchet up sales taxes higher than those surrounding states, all we would have done is pushed everybody across the state line to buy their stuff. That makes no sense. It defeats the purpose. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've seen some pretty stupid stuff come out of Jefferson City over the last 4 years, but even Jefferson City is not that dumb. We cannot have the rate be higher than the surrounding states will allow. So it's not going to be higher than 6.25. That means that the highest amount that we're going to see increased on the state sales tax, 4.225 to 6.25, is 2.025% at the cash register. That's the highest amount. There is, however, in the amendment what I like to call the wraparound effect, and that is that when we expand the sales tax basis, the local governments also have their sales tax base expanded at the same time. That means that they will be able to derive revenue from those new tax items, like services. I'll get to that in just a second. But the amendment prohibits any windfall to the local governmental entities. They are not allowed to see a windfall from this expansion. So let's just, and I'm going to give you just a real simple example because the math gets weird, but I want you to see what I'm saying. So if you lived in a community that had a combined county and city sales tax rate of 4%, and the base of expansion expands to where they're going to receive a 50% increase in revenues. So from $8 million in revenues on sales tax, and now they're going to get $12 million. They are prohibited from seeing that increase, and Amendment 5 specifically requires that they lower their local rates so that they still get $8 million. That means that your local sales tax rate, if they lower just the sales tax, the lower sales tax rate would have to go from 4% down to 2.71%. State goes up 2.025. The local has to lower theirs. And when you offset those two, at the cash register, a $100 purchase, in this example, a $100 purchase would be an increase in sales tax of 77 cents on $100. Now, I know that's not what they're saying on Facebook, and I can't help that other folks don't understand how math works, but now I'm telling you, that's how math works, and it works that way every single time. There are other cities that, because of their structure of sales tax, which, by the way, their people have voted on in order for it to, I mean, it may have only been 4% turnout, but their people voted on in order for it to get where it was, and they may not have sales tax that allows them to be able to drop it down, so they're going to be required to lower their property tax rates. Or in the case of Kansas City or St. Louis, they'll have to lower their income tax that they're allowed to have. But the local government is not permitted to derive a windfall because of Amendment 5. And Amendment 5 at the state level must be used dollar for dollar to offset the income tax, so that the income tax is lowered, the local taxation is lowered, and the distinction between the two is literally pennies on the dollar. The third question. Once we get to zero, shall it be mandated in the state of Missouri that the income tax shall never be put again upon the people of the state of Missouri? See, the problem with the income tax for most of us is that we just don't know anything else. The income tax was established in the state of Missouri in 1917. It's almost 100 years. And nobody here, and nobody I've ever been, even those slightly over 100 years old, nobody remembers what it was like prior to the income tax. And we just accept it as normal. That they're going to take your money without your seeing it, without your permission. And they expect you later on in April to send them forms where you have to tell them your name, your address, your source of income, how much money you made, how much you spent on various things that you think will offset your tax burden, and you've got to tell them how much you got, where you got it from. Things that if I walked up to you on the street with a clipboard and asked you those questions, you'd look at me and say, that's none of your business, get away from me. But we line up to tell them. Now, in this country, the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees that we have the right not to testify against ourselves, the right against self-incrimination. The government cannot compel you to tell against your own best interest things that might cause you criminality criminal repercussions for criminality, and so we can't compel you to testify against yourself in anything, except, of course, April 15th, where we tell you you're going to fill out the form, you're going to tell us how much you made, you're going to tell us how much tax you're owed, and if you make a mistake, we could come after you for perjury. And we've done it for so long, it seems normal that nobody even questions it. I tell you what gets me even more. I don't mean any disrespect to the young people in the room, but it's almost always the young people that do this. Sorry, buddy. They'll go, woohoo, got my refund, I'm rich. And I always want to shake them and say, Scooter, that's your money. They took your money without your permission, kept it for a year, gave you some of it back, no interest whatsoever, and you're excited that you got a check of your own money from a government that took it from you? That's like me breaking into your house, stealing all your silverware, and then throwing a few forks back through the window as I go by, and you thank me for returning the forks. It's ridiculous. The system that punishes us all. What is the American dream? I would surmise that it is essentially the ability to use your talents, your work ethic, your industry to build as much wealth for yourself as you possibly can, to be able to purchase and own your own properties, and to be able to pass that on to your children and grandchildren as you see fit. And we tax every single step of the way. Why are we taxing the American dream? Why are we tolerating the invasion of privacy? Why are we tolerating the tyranny of taking your money without your consent, and then they decide how much they're going to give back to you, and then we have the audacity to thank them for it and get excited about it? But it's gone on so long, nobody knows any different. But it was not always this way. Consumption taxes allow you to choose when you're going to pay your taxes, how much you're going to pay in taxes, because you're the only one that decides what it is that you're going to purchase. The sales tax rate shall not be above 6.25%. The sales tax shall not be applied to anything having to do with health care, medical expenses at all. I know that's true because the national government prohibits the sales tax of anything having to do with Medicare or Medicaid. You cannot extract Medicare and Medicaid from all other, we have a doctor here. How heavily ingrained is Medicare and Medicaid in every clinic, every hospital, every doctor billing? The very prices are predicated upon what Medicare will allow. There is no tax that's going to be on your doctor's visit or your dentist or anything like this. Not going to be. There are no taxes that are going to be predicated upon housing in the state of Missouri. No sales tax. Because the Missouri State Constitution already prohibits the idea of sales tax being applied on the sale of homes. And the governor has said he will veto anything that would have any other housing industry be sales taxed at all. So no rental at all. And there is to be no sales tax whatsoever on agricultural products. The governor has declared he'll veto anything like that. So those are all off the table. And people say, well, okay, I see where I might pay 77 cents per $100 purchase at the cash register. That's not egregious. I could probably swing that. But what about the taxes on the services? I don't want to pay taxes on my hairdresser appointment. I don't want to pay 6.25% plus whatever the city charges. I don't want to pay that when I have somebody mow my lawn. Fair enough. Fair enough. Is anybody here, I know a couple of you are because I told you about it. You've studied it on your own as well. But who here is familiar with the principle of embedded taxation? Embedded taxation is a recognition of a few basic economic principles. The cost of goods and services are based upon the cost of production of goods and services, plus whatever profit margin they think they can get out of the purchaser. So when Brett paid way too much money for these red, white, and blue star-spangled striped tennis shoes over here, I don't know what he paid for them, but it's too much.
It's none of your business.
Yeah, it's none of my business, but it's a lot more than I would have given for them. So anyway, I don't know what he paid for them. But the reason those shoes cost that much is because you have to take into account for the cost of production of the rubber and the material and the shoelaces and the machinery and the people to operate the machinery and the individuals who put them in boxes and the truck drivers that take them to the stores and then the individuals at the stores who sell them or the people who ship them from Amazon, whatever the case may be. Every single little tiny step of the way accounts for a piece of the cost of the production of those shoes. And you have to account for that, and at the same time, you have to say, I wonder what somebody would be willing to pay for them. And if the price is too high, they don't sell any. And if the price is too low, they sell a ton, but they lose money. And so there is an equation of balancing cost of production and the price point people are willing to purchase. And they found Brett's price point, and he bought it. But he paid for every single piece of the step along the way of the cost of production of those shoes. Included in the cost of the production of those shoes is the income tax that everybody in the production process had to pay. And if we could eliminate the income tax, then we can eliminate some of the cost of the production of goods and services. You've got an attorney you want to use? I don't want to pay 6.25% on my attorney. Your attorney's paying his income tax. You think he's not passing that cost on to you currently? I promise you he is. If we can eliminate that and he doesn't have to pay income tax any longer, then he can lower his prices. And people say they never lower prices. Come on, man. Nobody lowers their prices. All right, we got a genuine gas station man right here. What happens every single time the price of crude oil goes up? What happens at the filling station? Cost goes up. Price goes up at the pumps, right? We all know that. What happens when the price of crude goes down? Invariably, somebody says, oh, they leave it the same, the greedy so-and-so. But it does go down. Does it go down as quickly as we'd like? No. Does it go down as much as we'd like? No. But it does go down. Why does it go down? Because the oil companies are no longer greedy that week? Why does it go down? Because competition. Because some guy who over here at the corner says, hey, now's my chance. Crude oil's gone down. My costs have gone down. I can drop my price per gallon of fuel a little bit, and for 20 minutes till everybody else catches on, maybe I can get more of the business that's out there, and I can increase my share of the customer base. And then everybody else starts chasing it downward. I'm old enough, this is how old I am. I'm old enough to remember the gasoline wars here in Springfield. I was driving down, it's not there any longer, but there in Grant and Grand, there was no filling station there, and the filling station was torn down a long time ago, but the sign was left up. I was driving by with my girls, and I paused there at the light, and I said, you see that sign? They said, yeah. I said, you see where it says 71 cents a gallon? They said, yeah. I said, they went out of business because that was too high. That's what competition in a free market society does every single time. And oh, by the way, it only always has. It's never been any different. If we can eliminate the income tax basis of the baked-in, embedded taxation, the prices of those services will go down. And the tax amount, therefore, is not nearly as much. But let's just say that the rate is 6.2% statewide. The average person who pays directly into income tax in the state of Missouri pays $3,000 a year in income tax. That's the average. Do you know how much services you'd have to buy taxed at 6.25% in order to equal $3,000 a year? you got to buy $48,000 worth of services in order for 6.25% to equal $3,000. Now, I don't know who's getting their nails done $48,000 a year at a time, but hey, mazel tov, you're having a great life. It's not you, Steve. I've seen your nails. I think people don't really appreciate how few serve. When you take medical out, when you take housing out, when you take agricultural out, I'm not sure people recognize really how few actual services they're purchasing day by day. But here's the big thing. And then I'm going to shut up. We'll take all the questions. You and I have labored our entire lives under this system, which is egregious. And we don't think it's that bad because we've never known it any differently. But it's terrible by comparison to the way things used to be. And we can look at the other states. We can look at Texas, but Texas has got oil. And we can look at Florida, but Florida's got Mickey Mouse. We don't have oil. We don't have Mickey Mouse. But what does Tennessee have? And somebody say Nashville. Have you been to Nashville lately? Or how about Memphis? They've got Nashville, but we've got St. Louis, we've got Kansas City, we've got Springfield, we've got Bass Pro, we've got Buc-ee's. If you think that's not a big deal, you haven't been there yet. We have essentially what Tennessee has. But since 2018, Tennessee has been whipping our behinds economically year after year after year. And the distinction is Tennessee does not have an income tax. Tennessee has a sales tax that is higher than what we are going to bring this up to. Tennessee still whips our behinds. I hate losing, especially to Tennessee. But I'm so glad that there's younger people here. I hate the fact that we've labored under this system our entire lives to the point that it's become normal, and we think it'd be all right if it just continued on that way. But my children, my grandchildren, I don't want them to have to suffer through what we've all suffered through. And we go, it wasn't that big of a deal, we got through it. Yeah, well, you know what? When I was a kid, we didn't have any money, and I ate macaroni and cheese about 4 nights a week because that's what we could afford. I don't want my kids to have to suffer through that either. There's a lot of things that we went through that we don't want our children to have to go through. How many of us with kids and grandkids, how many of us have sacrificed so that our kids and grandkids would have it better off than we did? I would say every single one of us. I don't want my children or my grandchildren to be stuck paying an income tax that I've had to pay the whole time, that has held back the economy, that has held back the prosperity, that has prohibited companies from coming to this state and bringing jobs, real jobs. Do you know what our biggest, most valuable export factor is here in the state of Missouri? Do you know what we export more valuably than anything else? It's our kids. My grandchildren want to go to the East Coast, spread their wings, and try to fly. That's great, but they shouldn't have to leave because there's no opportunities here for them. And that's what our kids have been doing for decades. It's time to quit. It's time to do away with the income tax. That's why I'm a yes on Amendment 5.